Selvä juttu. Tässä on lähdemateriaalin osa 22, Tuomion hotelli ja pelastus käännettynä sana sanalta ja kokonaan englanniksi.
Osa 22. In the airplane. In the airplane. Mountain village. Hotel. Mansion. Villagers. Harbor. Sacrifice. Mountain. Museum. Path to the cabin. Abyss of shadows. Bridge of life. As the airplane bounced in turbulence. From the cockpit radio, a voice was heard. A small thunderstorm coming. No worries. Toivo and Elisa sat by the window seat side by side and squeezed each other by the hands. "Joke? That I'm afraid of flying," blurted Toivo, and grabbed the drink brought by the stewardess into his scarf. The drink tossed the drink back. Drink it quickly. The drink burned the throat and warmed Toivo's face. "Did it ease?" said Elisa. "Yes, a little," blurted Tivo. "Have you, Eliza, noticed the tall one in the middle row? Man dressed in a black suit. That one who has those black pointy mustaches and a silver walking stick at the end of which is a skull. And who types all the time on that bag model laptop computer?" "I haven't, Toivo." "Toivo, not everyone who looks a little different is dangerous." Wolf Tony took from under his mustaches from the corner of his mouth a detachable gold tooth, which he put on the side of his specially protected laptop. It was some kind of computer part. On the screen appeared a map of the mountain village. And some kind of light dots were red, blinking, paranormal target. Tony's glasses were some kinda 3D glasses. He looked with them inside his targets. They were buildings. Through the glasses, to the front part of the computer appeared some kind of hologram. Inside the hologram was some kind of animal human. It was a werewolf. "I located you." At the same time, a lightning struck next to the plane, blinking the lights of the plane. Dark. The plane shook massively, and the seats jerked and cracked. "Ah!" shouted Toivo. "Is this can dropping now?" And at the same time, the lights returned. Outside, it rained pouring down, and lightning snapped. "Remember seatbelts." An announcement was heard. "We will arrive in Tooth Cavity. In an hour," the flight captain's announcement was heard. Tooth Cavity, Mountain Fjord Village, had gotten its name from the sticking out sharp mountain peaks which reached to over kilometers of heights. Tom, who sat in the seat behind Toivo, was a phobic. He feared almost everything except flying. It calmed Tom. Tom looked out, scared, from the plane's oval glass. Above and beside the airplane's wing snapped lightnings. Suddenly, something came in the clouds, like levitating onto the airplane's wing. It was a figure who had a black, ragged robe, which whisked in the wind. What on earth? Tom looked. The creature took the hood off, and he saw how something moved on the creature's face. There was a flash, and the face was right at Tom's window. It was a bloody skull which swarmed with worms and black spiders. They gushed from the creature's eyes and mouth. Tom jolted awake and shouted, "Spiders! Spiders!" Toivo turned and calmed Tom. Elisa sat next to Tom and prayed for him.
Tom calmed down.
The stewardess arrived. Is something wrong? Nightmares. They come from that village. Tooth cavity.
Sorry, I do not understand what you speak.
At the same time, the sky cleared and a mountain range came out. The mountain range looked like some troll who grimaced. Suddenly, a chilling sound was heard from the airplane speakers. Cree, tooth cavity. And the voice changed at the same time into ordinary captain speech.
18 degrees warm, occasional rain, beautiful weather.
Toivo thought, interrupting the speech. What on earth was that?
Tom calmed down and took into his fist a necklace.
In it was a blue pearl. Toivo and Elisa opened the map of Tooth Cavity. There is our cabin at the foot of the mountain, and a waterfall is there too. Oh, how romantic! Oh, how romantic! Toivo said Elisa. And suddenly, the airplane bounced. Welcome to the Big Bear Airport. The captain's voice was heard. The escalators were lowered down. And it was quiet as a mouse. The airport was surrounded by mist. As Tony rushed down the stairs, he walked in front of the airport surrounded by mist. His wristwatch blinked weird. Tony blurted, opened the glass doors, and walked into the cafe. There were a couple of dozen of us in total who came out of the plane. Old Lady Claire, high school graduates who looked hungover, car mechanic Jack, newlywed happy couple, stewardess and a few other tourists and flight captains, and Tom. Your bus will arrive soon, said the stewardess, and started to squeal, and a flash of lightning came, and they were gone, the flight captains and the stewardess. We were at the rusty bus stop of the misty airport, suddenly. What happened? And at the same time, from the mist drove a black bus, which had the numbers 666. The door opened, and at the same time, the mist thickened. Tony's watch blinked like a fire alarm. Interesting. One of the youths blurted, "I will not step into that heavy metal bus," and started to walk into the mist. A crunch sound was heard as he disappeared into the mist, and a squeal and a roar of some monster, and it became quiet as a mouse. "Lucy, Lucy," one of the youths said. Some dark-eyed, scary-looking old man blurted from the cabin of the bus. Does anyone else want to deviate from the route? Come, your journey to darkness begins. A bony hand reached towards the passengers, and it was as if they felt a cold grip on their back. Lightning flashed, and everyone sat suddenly inside the black bus, on black leather seats. It feels like something had moved under the leather of the seats. Cold shivers went up and down Eliza's spine. On the empty seats were some kind of extinguished black sooty lanterns. "What is this? What is this?" Between the cabin and the passenger compartment was some weird wall. It rippled as if it was black water. Ha ha! The old man's voice was heard like a ghost from the crackling speakers. Next, we drive past the village of the soulless and stop at the temple of the Black Tooth. Tony's watch vibrated a weird blue light.
There are many of them. There are many of them. Tom was completely quiet. He as if shouted inside his head from terror.
Old Lady Clark knitted a sock peaceful.
The tourists spoke a weird language hastily.
Next, the temple, a crackle was heard. The bus door slammed open,
And some bony, tall figure, dressed in a black robe, came from the bus's liquid wall.
It levitating moved to the tourists. It reached out those creepy bony grips and grabbed them by the head. A crunch sound was heard, and he started to drag out the bleeding, rattling poor humans. The passengers shouted from terror
as the creature dragged the bodies out of the bus.
In front was the most creepy temple made of huge, sooty teeth.
Its mouth was like a maw, and there burned flames as the creature tossed the bodies into the maw.
A crackling sound was heard from the speakers. Next, Cree, the Hotel of Doom. The bus stopped at an old archway which read, in Latin, Hotel of Doom. At the same time, a lightning flashed, and the passengers were in front of a dark, four-story hotel under whose old windows were different animal statues.
In the windows were seen wax candelabras,
and in the shadows something moved. The bus sped into the mist as the lightning flashed. "What is this? What is this?" Tony said. "Let's not deviate from the route now into the hotel." Going inside from the revolving doors of the hotel, Tony pressed the bell. The counter and the lobby were made of decorated reddish wood. At the same time, thunder rumbled, and in front was an old, sick-looking woman whose pitch-black eyes looked Tony in the eyes and spoke without the mouth moving inside Tony's head. "Room number 6. Elisa and Tivo held their heads. Room number 7. The youth held their heads. Room number 0. Tom heard a voice. Room number 8. And at the same time came a rumble and flash of lightning, and the old woman was gone. Tick-tock, tick-tock, the old grandfather clock was heard. "Listen to me. Listen to me, Tony." Turned to look seriously at his fellow passengers.
"I am a kind of researcher whose employer I cannot say.
But I research paranormal phenomena, and this here, my watch which blinks, is a ghost detector. We must pull the same rope even if the rope is black. Let us all investigate our rooms." At the same time, lightning flashed. Tony roared. He lay on the bed on top of a black silk sleep blanket. Tony saw on the wall an old rifle and the stuffed head of a wolf and a bear. Above the fireplace, Tony rose to his feet quickly. On the wall was a painting which had an old picture of the mansion. Tony went in front of the window and looked into the mist. Elisa woke up in a marble tub surrounded by wax candles. Toivo woke up in a Victorian wood-patterned bed. Candles lit the room. "Elisa!" shouted Toivo. "I am here." Toivo hurried to the bathroom. "My darling." "Wait, Elisa, on the floor, something glitters." It was some kind of key, at the end of which was a black pearl and a bone finger. At the same time, they heard from behind the wall from number 6. The breaking of a window and a shout, and it was as if a huge wolf had growled and howled from behind the wall. Toivo grabbed a candle, and over Elisa on the wall was written with soot the words, "Flee." Tony looked from the window into the mist. His watch started to blink again. Suddenly, the fireplace flared to burn. Tony turned scared and saw the stuffed wolf's head blinking in the shadow of the campfire. At the same time, the window broke behind Tony, and Tony felt sharp claws on his back, which pulled him outside into the mist and darkness. "Did you hear that, Elisa?" "I heard," said Elisa. "Let's go fetch Tom." They opened the door to the hotel corridor. The hotel carpet was something red-hairy in the corridor. Under the old paintings in the corridor burned candelabras on dusty tables. From under the wooden room number 8 slipped a letter. "It is from Tom Elisa," said. At the same time, from behind the door, a trembling voice was heard, "Leave me alone." Toivo opened the letter on an old wooden table in the candlelight. He suddenly felt a chilling breeze of wind in his spine. Elisa squealed. Toivo turned and saw for a moment as lightning flashed from the window at the end of the corridor. A pale figure reaching up to the ceiling, thin and ragged, dressed in a tuxedo, from whose deathly pale face's mouth blood flowed, and his eyes were pitch black. At the same time, the creature was gone. Toivo's heart pounded and sweat flowed on his face. Elisa said, "We must get away from here." Toivo opened Tom's envelope, and in it read, written with blood, "Attic." Toivo's gaze turned to the mansion of the painting on the other wall. In the painting was a truly gloomy mansion, in front of which was some bloody fountain, from which some woman drank. Toivo took the painting and threw it to the floor. Behind it was some kind of keyhole. "Try the finger-shaped key into it. Try the finger-shaped key into it." As Toivo put the key in the lock, the black pearl at the end of the key started to glow a red color, and from between the wallpapers started to leak red liquid in the shape of door frames. A rumble was heard in the wall, and Toivo touched the wall it pulled down from the door's place. There was a gloomy corridor up, and stone stairs which were full of spider webs. "Welcome to the blood room." Something was written on the wall. Toivo took a candelabra from the corridor and read. It read, "The Art of Blood. To the fountain. The mansion of death takes." May 2nd at 3:03 p.m. Topi Haltu took Elisa by the hand, stepping onto the dark stairs going to the attic. The boards creaked under the feet. Toivo lit a 3-legged candelabra on the wall and took it in his hand. Going up to the attic, the shadows of the candles flickered on the wooden spider-webbed walls. Suddenly, behind the attic's old lattice windows flashed a huge lightning of the sky, at the same time growling. The whole attic lit up, and it was full of some kind of black wooden coffins in which was a silver cross upside down on top of each coffin. I walked to one window to see out, and at the same time lightning vibrated, and I saw a ragged body wet from the rain on the branch of the hotel's tree. I held back my vomit. "It is Tony. Don't Elisa look." I looked in the light of the candelabra at a rusty plaque written on the attic wall, in which read a dark poem. "Wolves howl. Bloody vampires wake. Your wound of the body. Your wound of the soul. They smell." I heard creaking behind us. I turned, and 10 of the coffins that were in the attic were half open. "Now, Eliza, let's be quiet," whispered Toivo. Toivo looked into one of the coffins. There lay a man, naked, but hair started to grow on his body, and his fangs grew. Outside howled wolves. Suddenly, Eliza said, "Look into this coffin, Toivo." And we saw there a man dressed in a fine tuxedo, whose skin was deathly pale, and sharp fangs came out of the mouth. From the creature's mouth flowed blood, and the coffin was full of the bodies of dead rodents. I saw next to the wall a bottle of lighter fluid. I sprayed it everywhere into the coffins and said to Eliza, "Do you see that old service elevator? Run there when I say." "What about Tom?" blurted Eliza. "Now," said Toivo, and threw the candelabra on top of the coffins. The attic was filled with unnatural screaming of human and a mixture of wolves howling and also hissing as the creatures caught fire. I ran to the elevator. Eliza had already pressed the button where read Catacombs. I pulled the elevator's rusty lattice door shut. At the same time, 4 faces crashed into the lattice. One was half man and half wolf's faces, which burned and howled, biting the lattice door. And one was a hissing vampire's face, whose body was on fire. The vampire's eyes were completely blood red. He hissed as the elevator started moving down. "I will catch you, Toivo. Cree, I will drink your blood and sacrifice you to the demon god." It felt as if the elevator had moved for an eternity, creaking and full of smoke downwards. We coughed, and the doors opened into the catacomb. In front opened the most huge catacomb cave clearing, in the middle of which was a bubbling acid pond, and in the holes of the walls were body coffins. We walked with Eliza along the side of the acid pond to a narrow corridor which slanted downwards and on whose black walls burned black wax candles. May 2 at 3:28 p.m. Topi Haltu. We arrived as we walked the thin corridor down as if into a kind of huge underground temple. There were like wooden church benches in a row on the sides of the circular floor. In the middle of the floor burned a hexagram made of candles.
And when I looked up, there was a pentagram consisting of several impaled bodies. Blood flowed like a shower of rain dripping on top of the hexagram. On the wall climbed spider-like vampire creatures and naked humans turning into werewolves. They moved surprisingly fast and went to lay down in the coffins on the walls. On both sides of the hexagram came a bloody red underground stream like two rivers which flowed inside the earth from one point. The rivers came from the nostrils of a skull sculpture. From the nostrils rode in red canoes red-hooded villagers, torches in hand. There were many of them, and they had come to feed their underground demon gods, to appease the anger. In the middle of the canoes were tied animals and naked living human sacrifices. Toivo and Elisa hid behind the row of benches and watched for a moment. They started to slaughter the victims on top of the hexagram, and the coffins on the walls slammed open, and the vampires and werewolves jumped from the walls onto the victims, and blood splashed along the temple.
After this horrific dining, the creatures scampered along the walls unnaturally fast to their coffins. As the canoes were leaving, Toivo saw one of them left alone behind with the canoe. Toivo tore from the wall a small grotesque gargoyle statue. Toivo sneaked behind the canoe man and walloped so hard that the statue cracked on the man's head. Toivo shoved the man to float into the bloodstream and reached a hand to Elisa. "Now, let's get out of here," said Toivo, and they started to row with the blood-splattered canoe. Elisa cried, "We could not help them. There were too many villagers."
May 2nd at 3:42 p.m. Topi Haltu. The underground stream took us to a dark lake. The stream came out of the rock wall and the blood disappeared into the lake. The lake was surrounded in the moonlight by a gloomy old spruce forest. The trees hummed in the mild wind, and I rode slowly forward, as Elisa sat and sobbed, sitting on my jacket in the canoe. Far away was seen the shore of the village. It was otherwise pitch black, except the moonlight, which shone above us. Approaching the shore, I noticed that there burned dozens of bonfires. The kayaks were on the shore in a row, and the red-hooded villagers had disappeared. "Let's go via the edge of the forest so we wouldn't be noticed," said Toivo. We hit rocky ground, and we had to wade to the shore quietly. We arrived into the fragrant, moonlit spruce forest. Elisa started. Far away was heard the howling of several wolves. We stepped amidst the spruces on mounds and arrived at the yard of a small cabin, where in the yard was some kind of wooden pole which was full of animal and human skulls. "We are not staying here," said Elisa. Suddenly we heard the clatter of horses from afar. Someone or something was coming. We ran behind the cabin where there was a shed, and I noticed a sharp wood axe and grabbed it. And we hid behind the woodshed. May 2nd at 3:47 p.m. Topi Haltu, Toivo said to Elisa, "Throw this spruce cone there when I say, 'Now, Elisa.'" And the red-hooded creature, riding a black steed, set off towards the sound. At the same time, Toivo threw from behind the creature with what his powers were able to, so with the axe into the back. The villager slumped lifeless to the ground, and Elisa grabbed the horse's bridle and calmed the horse. We got on the horse's back and rode on the forest path with the trees humming above us towards the village. When we arrived at the edge of the village forest, we saw in the middle of the square of Victorian houses, tied to a pole, Tom. We saw how from the roof of one temple shot a fiery arrow some hooded villager. As the arrow hit a pile of twigs which caught crackling on fire. Now, said Toivo, we jumped on the horse's back with Elisa, and Toivo swung the axe from side to side like a Viking who got a fit of rage. The strike of the axe felled villagers like hay. Elisa grabbed a spear and pierced a couple of villagers. Toivo tossed the axe towards the burning pole. The axe cut the searing tied ropes from Tom's hands. Elisa jumped onto the back of another horse and grabbed Tom onto the horse's back, and they rushed riding to the dirt road leading to the dark spruce forest. Suddenly galloping in the forest, we heard the sounds of bone horns around the village, which echoed in the forest. The forest started to swarm with hairy, naked werewolves and vampires. These came like a wave of insects towards us around the forest. From there came a strong rustling, hissing, and howling. We arrived through the forest to the seashore. Tom's blue pearl ring glowed light, and we prayed. We saw how far away on the dark sea struck branching lightnings, and a huge brightness approached us. We rushed and dived into the waves of the sea. In the depths of the sea, we were surrounded by the angels of God, who grabbed us. These bright creatures, and we with them, were as if inside a lightning, which shot exploding into the sky from the sea, taking us through the universe to a new earth and a new heaven. The angels stripped us and dressed us in glowing jewel outfits. We arrived at a sky gate in the shape of a blue pearl. From there ran in large numbers towards us our loved ones who had slept in Christ. They wore glowing white clothes, and they hugged us and said, "Welcome to the paradise of Christ and the saints."
On the sea at 5:21 p.m., Topi Haltu. On the sea in the shape of a glowing cross towards the island rode in front the Messiah and the white riders. Onto the shore gushed those bloodsuckers as if into some kind of pile heap on top of each other. They howled, swarmed, and squealed. The flame departing from the mouth of the Messiah, in which there were lightnings, set the heap into eternal fire, with the creatures burning and squealing at the same time. Christ took from his back. May 2nd at 5:24 p.m. Topi Haltu. An iron scepter which he struck on the surface of the sea, the water disappeared from around the island, and a mudslide